Today's lesson is on volume and volume of all sorts of different shapes. So first of all, just a bit of a review. You should remember from all the way back in grade 8 that the volume of any prism, the formula that we use is capital B times H. And what this B stands for is that it is the area of the base, which is why it gets to be a capital letter because it is representing an area, and the H is just the height of the prism. So you should remember that. So how do we find the volume of this rectangular prism then? Well, we just use the formula. Area of the base times the height. In this case, the base is this rectangle along the bottom. That's 4 inches by 7 inches. How do we find the area of a rectangle? Well, length times width. So 4 times 7, and then we're going to multiply that by the height, which is 5. So 4 times 7 times 5 is 140. Now these measurements are all in inches, and volume is inches cubed. A formula that everybody likes to remember is volume equals length times width times height. But that is only for rectangular prisms like this. So the formula area of the base times the height is the same as this because the B is really the length times the width. It's the same as the length times the width because the base is the area of a rectangle. So in this case, it's the same. In no other prism is it length times width times height. That is why we prefer to use the formula the area of the base times the height. So if we are moving on to this triangular prism, again, we say the volume is the area of the base times the height. And remember, the base doesn't mean what's flat on the bottom. For a prism, the base is the same on both ends, and then it's kind of stretched out in between there, and then that distance apart between those two sides that are the same would be your height. So in this case, the base is this triangular face. So how do we find the area of a triangle? Because we are trying to find the area of the base. Well, you should remember base times height divided by 2. We have this little 90-degree measurement in here. So this means that the base and the height are 3 and 5. So 3 times 5 divided by 2. Then we multiply by the height of the entire prism, which is how far these two triangles are apart, which in this case is 8. So you do all that multiplication and division, and you get 60 centimeters cubed. Again, this should be a review. A cylinder also is still a prism. We've got a circle on each end, and then how far they are apart is the height. So the area of the base multiplied by the height. In this case, the base is this circle. How do we find the area of a circle? Pi r squared, and then we multiply by the height. So this particular question says that the radius of the circle is 9 millimeters, and the height is 21. So we've got pi times 9 squared multiplied by 21, which if we round to the nearest tenth, 5,343.8, and this one would be millimeters cubed. So all of these questions up until now should be a review. Volume is the area of the base times the height. But what we are going to talk about today is what happens if we have a pyramid or a cone. So this first video is just pyramids. So if you have watched the water demonstration, which I should have showed you by now, you should know that 3 pyramids fit into a prism. So if we have a pyramid, we take this and we multiply it by 3, we get the volume of the prism. And we talked about how the volume of the prism is the area of the base multiplied by the height. That must mean that the volume of the pyramid is the area of the base multiplied by the height and then divided by 3. Or another way to write it is that it is 1/3 the area of the base multiplied by the height. So remember, this only works for the specific case where it says when a prism and a pyramid have the same height, their height has to be the same and the same base area. If they have the same base area and the same height, then the volume of the pyramid is related in this way. So in this case, the volume of the pyramid is 1/3 of the prism. So we're going to calculate the volume the same way, the area of the base times the height, and then we're going to divide it by 3. So if we have a right square pyramid with a base length of 4 inches squared and a slant height of 6 inches, what is the volume? So let's just draw a quick sketch of a pyramid. Nice and perfect. It says that our base is 4 inches by 4 inches, and then it tells us that our slant height is 6 inches. And remember, our slant height is down the side here, so that line there is 6 inches all the way from the peak here to the middle of that bottom. But that's not really important when we're doing our volume calculation. We need to know this actual height here of the pyramid from the bottom to the top. So we are going to use the fact that this would create a right angle triangle and then use Pythagorean theorem. So this distance here is really only half of the square base, so that's going to be 2 inches. We know the slant height is 6, so now we can find the height that's going to be on this side. So, Pythagorean theorem, you should be able to do this in your sleep by now. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c is the hypotenuse. So I'm just going to do this really quickly. You should know at this point what to do here. So the last step is to square root your 32, so we're going to get h equals the square root of 32, which we could approximate, but I'm just going to leave it as the square root of 32 because that is an exact value. And we can type that into our calculator. So now when we go to find the volume, we know it is the area of the base multiplied by the height and then divided by 3 because it is a pyramid. So what is the base in this case? The base is a square. We've got a square on the bottom here. So the area of a square, well, length times width, in this case 4 times 4. Multiplied by the height of the pyramid, which in this case is the square root of 32. And then we're going to take that and divide it by 3. So you do that multiplication and division, and it says to the nearest cubic inch. So we get something just over 30 cubic inches. So to the nearest cubic inch, we're just going to say 30 inches cubed. And that is how it's done. One more for part 1 of this video. Determine the volume of a right rectangular pyramid with a base dimension 5.4 centimeter by 3.2 centimeter and a height of 8.1. So again, this time we've got a rectangle on the bottom of our pyramid. So we know it's 5.4 centimeters by 3.2 centimeters. And it's nice that it tells us the height. So straight from the bottom to the top there, it tells us is 8.1 centimeters. So we can just go ahead and use the formula. Area of the base times the height divided by 3 because it's a pyramid. Don't forget to put that divided by 3 in your formula. Don't just do it at the very end. This is a pyramid, so the formula has to be divided by 3. It's just a part of it. You just got to do it. So the area of the base in this case is a rectangle, so 5.4 times 3.2 multiplied by the height of 8.1 and then divided by 3. And this says to the nearest tenth, so we're going to get 46.7 centimeters cubed. And again, as I go through these examples, you should be typing them all into your calculator to make sure that what you get in your calculator matches what I get. Not only because occasionally I make mistakes, but just to confirm that you know how to use your calculator. Alright, so that is the end of part 1. In part 2, we will discuss cylinders and cones, so stay tuned for that.